really excited today to have a moderator like Dr. Joyce Wilson. She is the Assistant Professor of Black Media Studies and Education. She's an educational anthropologist for the School of Literature, Media, and Communications at Georgia Tech. She is the founder of Hip Hop 2020 Curriculum Project and an alumni fellow of the Harvard Hip Hop Archive. She is a former high school math teacher, and she began her academic career at Morehouse College in 2008. She is a native Atlantan like myself, so I'm really proud of that. She graduated from Benjamin E. Mays School Academy of Math and Science. I won't hold that against her because I graduated from Southwest DeKalb High School. She is widely published. She's an Emmy-nominated documentary film producer. She's a pioneer in the field of hip-hop pedagogy and higher education. She disseminated her research from the perspective of the African-American woman raised in the South and passing the Civil Rights Act of 1968 during her formative years of hip-hop culture. Her courses, particularly her courses on Outkast, trap music, politics of social justice, are just a few of the popular studies that she has at Georgia Tech, and she's been featured on NPR, 11 Alive, as well as a lot of international media outlets. She also has taught from an African-centered historical context, placing hip-hop squarely within the griot traditions and the Kemetic ideologies. She is fantastic, and we are just so happy to have her moderating today. If you'd like to learn more about her, you can visit drjoyce.net, and you can also tweet at her at Dr. Joyce. Without further ado, you're welcome. Hi.
How's everybody doing? Y'all are so good. Cool. So good evening. I have a few notes here that I'm going to just read from because I want to make sure that I introduce this distinguished panel in the most honorable way, and I also want to set context for the conversation that we're going to be having tonight about the relationship between Africa and hip-hop music. And so it is an absolute pleasure and honor to be the moderator for a discussion on hip-hop's connection to Africa and African traditions of storytelling, establishing a historical and cultural context, one that places hip-hop culture squarely in the center of Africa and defines hip-hop itself as an Africanism, perhaps even a metaphor or euphemism for Africa, is where I begin my courses on hip-hop communication and culture. My courses on hip-hop in higher ed and civic engagement. Hip-hop as an African muse is the nucleus that fuels my science, race, and technology course on Southern hip-hop, Outkast, and trap music. It is where I start teacher workshops on how to integrate hip-hop as a tool for teaching and learning. Because as an educational anthropologist, as an Outkast and trap music scholar, as an interactive narrative professor, and an archivist of the culture's most precious artifacts, to me, see, hip-hop culture is the most profound site for critical storytelling about the current cycle of Africans experiencing American culture and politics. To me, hip-hop is the catalyst for evoking cultural memory for people physically and geographically disconnected from their homeland. So tonight I want to set the same context for where my curriculum begins. It is perhaps one of the most seminal texts for cultural studies and Black American cultural production, and the title of that book is called Blues People, Negro Music in White America. As it relates to understanding blues music, post-transatlantic slave trade, and African music, pre-transatlantic slave trade, there is a requisite knowledge we must consider, that Leroy Jones says in his book. He says that blues as an aesthetic art form would never have existed if the African captives had not become American slaves. In fact, he writes, quote, "It is extremely important in a study of any aspect of the history of the American Negro to emphasize how strange and unnatural the initial contacts with Western slavery were for Africans, in order to show how the black man and woman was set apart throughout the New World from the start, end quote. He continues, this should enable one to begin to appreciate the amazing, albeit agonizing, transformation that produced the contemporary black American from such a people as were first bound and brought to this country. But the ugly fact, he continues, that the Africans were forced into an alien world where none of the references or cultural shapes of any familiar human attitudes were available is the determinant of the kind of existence they had to eke out here. Not only slavery itself, but the particular circumstances in which it existed. The African cultures, the retention of some parts of these cultures in America, and the weight of the steppe culture produced the American Negro, a new race, end quote. I would argue that it also, amongst other genres of music, including work songs, blues, jazz, rock and roll, gospel, and soul, I believe that it produced hip hop. In order to study the inspiration and influence of hip hop, he says, music throughout the African diaspora, and hip hop specifically, continues to be the, quote, persistent reference, just because the development and transmutation of African music to American Negro music represents to him this whole process in microcosm. So tonight we're going to scratch the surface of this process because we only have an hour to talk about Africa, a muse for hip hop music and culture. Okay, so first of all, let's make sure we all understand what it means to be a muse. A muse is a source of inspiration. It is a catalyst, the stimuli for creative influence. Then, what does it mean for Africa to serve as a source of inspiration for hip hop? What does it mean to talk about an African American art form like hip hop that has gone global and full circle at the same time? Artists are going to Africa to shoot videos now and produce content, and Africa is now relying on the African American aesthetic of the culture to impact its own. These are a few questions that will guide our discussion tonight. So what I want to do first is introduce our panel. DJ Nabs is a legendary Atlanta-based DJ, radio personality, and record producer. Nabs, a native of Durham, North Carolina, began his career in Atlanta in the late 80s as a mix show DJ for WVEE radio while attending Morris Brown College. In 1992, DJ Nabs' industry break came in the form of the Michael Jackson Dangerous Tour as a DJ for 90s teen sensation Chris Cross. Nabs has also worked with the group Arrested Development, producer Jermaine Dupri, Brad, Bow Wow, and also helped introduce a young rapper named Chris Lova, who would go on to become Ludacris. Nabs has recorded and produced many remix projects such as In the Labs with DJ Nabs, released on Columbia Records, In the Wind by Trick Daddy, CeeLo and Big Boy from Outkast in 2002, Icebox by Omarion, and many others. Nabs competes as an amateur boxer and is the founder of the Mad DJ Academy, which teaches up-and-coming DJs. Please welcome DJ Nabs. Dr. Paula Grissom-Broughton currently serves as the chair of the music department, where she also teaches courses related to women, race, and music. An active scholar and researcher on the subject of race and gender in the music classroom, Grissom-Broughton has presented her research at local and national conferences, including the National Association for Music Education. A former winner of Atlanta's Steinway piano competition, Grissom-Broughton remains an active musician, serving locally and nationally as an incredibly versatile collaborative pianist, guest clinician, and presenter for various panels and workshops. Please welcome Dr. Paula Grissom-Broughton. And Professor Griff, who really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Professor Griff is a hip-hop artist, he's a lecturer, he's a spoken word artist, You may know him as one of the members of Public Enemy and the founders of S1Ws. I know Griff from him mentoring me at the very beginning of me thinking about getting a PhD. He gave me a copy of his 48 Laws of Power, and I just gave it back to him 15 years later. Please welcome Professor Griff to the stage. Cool. Y'all ready? So we're just going to be real conversational. We've been talking backstage in the green room about a lot of things going on with hip-hop and Africa. And so I'm just going to start off with a general question for all of them. And that general question is really just like, if you were talking to a group of 8th graders, right? And you had to describe and define hip-hop, what would you say?
That's easy. You know, you take it back to the cafeteria where you just beat on the table and make some drum beats and bob your head. You know, kids will feel that. They'll understand that without really understanding. You know what I mean? To explain the rhythm and the feel of hip hop.
Yeah, I teach at Spelman, so sometimes, you know, the Spelman ladies like to get a little deep. But when I'm talking to 8th graders and 7th graders, I tell them that hip-hop is music, hip-hop is dance, hip-hop is art, hip-hop is the way you talk, the way you walk, hip-hop is everything you currently see in our society right now.
I think I would have to say hip-hop is higher infinite power healing our people. And then when they start to look at you sideways, then you have to go into a deeper explanation of it. You say hip-hop is that boom bip. And then they say, okay, that's for you old people. We don't, you know, we get turned. I don't know what the boom bip is. You understand what I'm saying? And like Nabs said, if you took out 2 nickels and you start beating on the table, a lot of them really don't even know what the beatbox is. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to speak to them kind of like on their level and just kind of let them know that hip-hop is what you are. Rap is something that you do.
That's good. So if we wanted to put this in the context of Africa, and we're talking about the inspiration of Africa on hip-hop, really just looking at what those Africanisms are, what would you say are some songs that those 8th graders can take back or go even listen to and say, oh, I hadn't even thought about that as a connection to the motherland? What would be some of those songs, if you're even thinking about it sonically?
I mean, Busta Rhymes, put your hands where my eyes can see. You know, come on. I'm already
there. What's so significant about that song, like that drum?
I mean, I feel like I'm gonna be talking about drums the whole time. I mean, because it's such a feel to the drums. I mean, if you take the bass out of the system in your car, you take the bass out of any I mean, you're not gonna feel the music. There's nothing to feel. And the drums give us the foundation. It connects us to the earth. You know what I mean? Even if a better example is if all the highs went out, you know, all the mid-range in the speakers, you know, where you hear the voice, but you hear you're gonna move, it's gonna move your body. So that's the main thing about that record, before he even says a word.
Before you even say it, right.
Doesn't have to say anything, you can pitch it.
Right. Dr. Paula, what would you say?
I like the classics. You know, I like some things that when I do speak to the 8th graders, when I play Grandmaster's Flash, the message, you know, they may not know all the parameters around it, but they at least know the part, don't push me, cause I'm
Uh-oh.
So they know that. There you go. So from that point, we can talk about other issues, you know, social issues and the other things that were prevalent during that time. So that's for me, that's my connection.
I think the connection, I think it's very, very simplistic when we don't overthink it. What I mean by that is, when you say Africa, the first question that comes to mind is what part of Africa? There's 1,000 different dialects on the continent of Africa. So we can kind of connect the brothers in Central Africa, or Mozambique, or Ghana, right to Liberty City and connect them to the Tula crew. We can connect someone in Ethiopia right to Memphis. You understand what I'm saying? Same people, same blood, and more important than that, same spirit, same vibration. You understand what I'm saying? How would you know if you put on a beat right now who's African in the audience, who's not? Unless your ass is dancing off beat. Oh, excuse me. Wait, hold on. My wife told me there's children in the audience. I gotta watch my mouth. But I'm right. It's a vibration and it's a spirit. You understand what I'm saying? When I looked over some of the questions, I was like, wow, this is interesting. I had to put them down because I didn't want to corrupt what I needed to say from the spirit side of me, as opposed to, I brought the notes back, by the way, anyway. But I'm just saying from the spirit side of me, the Minister of Information, the Public Enemy side of me brought the notes. But I just said to myself from the spirit side of me, every song that we hear that's hip-hop is African. Plain and simple, you can't skip that.
Say a little bit more about that, because
What is there to say? You mean feel a little bit more, just like Nabs said, you put on a Busta Rhymes joint, you can feel Africa. But even when we had no drums, the beginning of Cell Therapy by the Goody Mob. African. You understand?
so I'm gonna come back to the sound, and let's deal with like the lyrics and the content. How is the content and the topics of those content, how is that connecting and serving as an inspiration as well, back and forth? Like if you're even thinking about Africa and African Americans and just the notion of colonization or issues, social issues that come out of the lyrics, what kind of connections can we draw to the tradition that is very much a part of the music that we're listening to now in terms of the lyrics and the verses and the topics?
I think we understood what was happening. Some of us understood what was happening on a global scale, although we were here locally. But the way we got the information in the news was filtered through a lens, all right, that we had to semi-trust. So a lot of those early songs were strictly about, and I think nowadays, I don't know how the young people say, but when we came up, we used to say, we keeping it a buck, we keeping it real, we keeping it 100.
100.
You understand what I'm saying? But what does that truly mean in a global context?
Right.
When you say I'm keeping it a buck, if you that dude up on the corner of 125th Street, Lenox Avenue, and you could only see a mile or so in each direction, then how real are you keeping it? You understand what I'm saying? If that's going to be the source of your inspiration for you to write, all right? But if you're going to include, and I'm not saying those songs didn't go global, because they did. But I'm just saying, so if you want to write from a global perspective, in most cases you have to travel. Because Nat Geo ain't going to get it. The History Channel not going to get it. The Discovery Channel just don't work.
So hip hop is that vehicle for you to understand what's happening in a global space.
Yeah, and then even when the filmmakers did attempt to make the connection, how many people in the audience seen the movie Rise?
Yes.
Gotta see that movie. They did an African warrior connection. And without the brothers and sisters in LA even going to Africa, when they did the comparison of how the beats and the music made them move, they were doing the same dance moves. I'm talking about crumping was already there in Africa. Sad but true, and parents, buckle your seatbelt, twerking was already there. You understand? We just borrowed it from Africa. Alright? Alright, white girls, hold your seat. We don't want nobody twerking up in here, so just chill out for a second. I'm just saying, it was already there. So it's not a negative thing, so to speak. Once we have to try to define it and get it a song on the charts and have to explain it, to a television network, BET, MTV, or the other ones that's manufacturing hip-hop now. Then we have to try to define it and explain it to them. But if you really want to understand it, just come to anybody's family reunion.
You brought up dance. I want to talk to you, Dr. Paula, because backstage, you were talking about the ways in which these Africanisms show up in things beyond just the lyrics. You talked about dance earlier. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if you think about, particularly in the West African regions, how the music is a lot of things. Their music, one, it's purposeful and it's participatory. And so when you put those two together with the dance didn't just, happen in a vacuum. And when you combine that with the rhythm of the music, the syncopation, which in itself is Africanism. Earlier musicologists thought that it was just, savage people, but it was really genius with all the polyrhythms. And then you get the dancing to go with that, break dancing, and now in Africa, the Pansula dance that Tofu does, that you'll see in Beyonce's the Girls video, is African dance. And if you look at that music, it's the dance itself, it's a representation of the rhythm in the music. So it's like Professor said earlier, it shows up in our music all the time. All you have to do is just trace it, and you're gonna end back in Africa.
And if we're gonna trace it, Nabs, we were talking about this as well, if you're gonna trace the culture and look at the people who are producing the culture, the South oftentimes gets written out of the narrative of what hip hop has become. We tend to place that master narrative in the Bronx, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen there. Let me put that out there.
Because you know that's an argument.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But what I am saying is the South, and the music that was produced here, that hip hop samples from, comes from a particular geographic location. Say a little bit more about what we were talking about.
Ooh, I got so much to say. Okay, but I'm going to answer that. I always describe, I'm from Carolina, as you heard, and I experienced rap when I was 10 years old, Sugar Hill Gang, and later on I started DJing in '84, so rap was however old it was at that time. And I got records from the West Coast, New York, I got NC Shy, so I was getting Atlanta. But I didn't really know or connect to where records really came from. I didn't know that Egyptian Lover was what Cali was, because I never went to Cali. So the way, and of course I moved on and moved to Atlanta, and I got in the industry and I learned and I backtracked even past the Sugar Hill Gang, back to Cool Herc and how it started, to continue learning about this culture I love. And this is the way I always describe it. Eric B. and Rakim sampled James Brown. James Brown's from Georgia. African Bambaataa with Planet Rock was influenced by some guys from Germany. Kraftwerk, Trans-Europe Express, is a record that sounded like a train, but you have to hear it if you don't know it. Trans-Europe Express influenced Planet Rock. Well, the South took Planet Rock, and Planet Rock, evolved into Miami bass and Atlanta bass.
Right.
There's a record, Profile Records, Trigger Man. There's it's that New Orleans bounce. That's from a group, I think it's Trigger Man. But that's a record out of New York City, but New Orleans created this whole sound based off that loop. So that's hip hop.
Right.
That's why it's global, that's why it's really everything. That's my short answer for that.
So one of the songs that we talked about was Lil Jon.
Oh yeah.
And the call and response. I remember when John came out and he was just doing call and response and the chanting. I mean, it was extremely tribal, but he caught so much flack for that sound.
No lyrics, right?
Because there was no lyrics.
Right.
But it was call and response, which is one of the most crucial Africanisms.
Yeah.
So when we were backstage, we were talking about this because oftentimes there was flack around this idea of where are the verses, where are the lyrics, why is there just call and response? What's your feedback on
Let me tell you, anybody know Club 559?
Yes.
Okay. So listen, you know, Atlanta, it didn't take me long once I moved here, especially as a young man in college and trying to find my way, that you had to be in Atlanta and really live here, not just work here, but really live here and understand the community and the people. The people from Atlanta, the people that's of Atlanta, dance and move a certain way. So a club on Peachtree is different from Club 559 in the West End. So Little John, this is a true story. Little John developed his whole style of music based around what people really dance to at Club 559. That was not a place where you would hear a lot of Bad Boy records. You would hear 8 Ball and MJG. You would hear 666 Mafia. You know what I mean? You would hear The Organization. You would hear, of course, Raheem the Dream, all the bass artists.
Heavy drum and bass.
So, you know, it's call and response and it's dancing. And in the South, we like to dance. And we like to party. And it's not always very metaphorical. We're not necessarily trying to always think so hard. Put it mildly, right? I mean, think about it. You know, all the bass records is about dancing. Tootsie Roll and some records I can't even pronounce right.
A little bit more than dancing, bro.
Right. So, anyway, you know, I'm gonna keep going, but yeah, I just know for a fact that's how Little John was inspired to make the music to dance, to make people have fun, to lose their mind. And that's still his thing now. He's just doing it on an EDM level.
And now, I mean, with trap music, which if we're going to talk about hip hop, we have to talk about it in its contemporary way, in its contemporary style, which is trap music. And trap music is one of the city's greatest exports. And I'm just saying. I mean, trap music is, Atlanta has defined trap music in terms of style and sound and lyrics, and they're doing it everywhere outside of Atlanta. So we have to acknowledge that. I mean, we cannot be afraid to own that part of the culture. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that means, Paula. You know, what does it mean for a music like that, which many could say also has those elements of drum and bass and heavy on the keys, heavy on violin and percussion. You know, how do we understand that influence in the most contemporary way that we are experiencing hip hop right now in the form of trap music?
Wow, that's a good question. And it's actually one of those questions where I'm torn, because I too listen to trap music. And I see the musicality of it, and I see the genius behind it, and I also see the commodification of it, you know, how it's turned into a product. And I think when we commodify our music in the hip hop culture, it loses its historical and its social context. So
But that's part of just our music in
general,
right?
yeah, all of it. So when it comes to trap music, like I said, I see the genius in it. I see the musicality in it, in the way the lyrics are presented, how the slowness and the lilt in the lyrics and even the improvisatory side to it. To me, musically, that's genius. And then I'm also torn on the other sides, you know.
And it's in Africa.
It's in Africa.
We have artists that go to Africa to perform and sell out shows.
Absolutely.
You know, why do you think that's the case? That we now have, you know, even Lil Jon's opening up a school, just opened up a school in Ghana. We have, you know, Future has done shows in Africa, Unforgettable from French Montana. I mean, these influences are there, and that particular video is shot in Uganda. You know, Rick Ross caught a lot of flack for shooting one of his songs in Nigeria. So now we're beginning to see this back and forth, this exchange of culture. Some of those elements are the good elements of the culture, and others are not. Can you say a little bit about that?
When you talk about good and bad of the culture, you know, like you said earlier, culture is just your way of life. Everything you think, everything you do, clothes you wear, how you interact with nature, other people, and this concept that Professor Smalls gave us called the ojiji, which is your shadow. You can't escape your shadow. If you're going to listen to trap music, there's certain aspects, of course, you have to filter out. Now, me personally, I'm 57 years old. Half the time, I gotta ask my children, like, what the hell are they saying? So to the 50-somethings out there, I'm sure y'all can rock with me for a minute. But guess what? When I was younger, I had to ask my mom what was James Brown saying.
Exactly.
I didn't know what he was talking about. It was a beautiful thing. But can I say one thing real quick? I want to acknowledge someone, a fear and stickman from Dead Press. Can you stand up? Let's give them a round of applause. Come on, stand up. Thank you. Thank you. So, when you're talking about not understanding something, that's from a linguistic perspective.
Right.
It's not our language anyway. Do you understand what I'm
A
saying?
lot of coding.
But yeah, but it's a vibratory frequency.
Sure.
So we can either have God frequency or we can have the in frequency. We can operate somewhere in between. Who would know that someone would understand the song that Dead Press gave us? It's bigger than hip hop, hip hop. And they're merging the RBG, they're merging gang culture, street culture, knowledge of self, Africanism, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying? But along with Africanism, a whole bunch of other isms,
Right.
and then it worked for them. You understand what I'm saying? If I was Stick Man weighing about 98 pounds, I'm not sure what he weighed, but on the video, just kidding. You understand what I'm saying? It was a beautiful thing, and it worked because we understood it. My wife can tell you sometimes I watch the TV with the volume down, because I want to get a whole different perspective.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? In some cases you do, especially with music, especially with Africa. This whole idea of nonverbal communication. Now, sometimes when you walk in the club and DJ Nabs is DJing and the music is real loud, he's not going to hear you if you say, what's up, Sway? But we understand that, though. And in other cases, we're in places where it's a lot of them and a few of us. You just have to give each other that look. If you got my back, you understand what I'm saying? That's just real. You understand? That's just real. That's culture. That's what we have to attack that in order to survive. You understand what I'm saying?
I want people to start getting ready for your questions, because we're gonna open it up in a second for questions, you know, but I want to circle back to you now and get a sense of, in terms of sound, where do you think hip hop is headed?
That's a good question, because let me tell you, I was going to say when you talked about trap music reminds me of early 80s hip hop in the sense of drums and sonics, because anybody familiar with Mantronics?
Yeah, of course.
Mantronics was my favorite producer in the 80s, and he's just totally unsung even to this day. Manny Fresh from the Cash Money, era. One of his greatest influences was Mantronics, and I could tell just by listening to Manny Fresh. It was a real emphasis on the drums and different kinds of drums. There's a kick that's poop, poop, and there's and it's the combination of a bunch of drums and snares. So when I hear 2 Chainz, for instance, that's what I hear mostly. And again, it's 2 things that happens in my mind when it comes to hip hop. There's the feeling. There's the beats, there's the sound that moves your body, and a good DJ is going to just channel the whole room like mind control. And the lyrics don't always translate, especially in a big group setting. It's one banger after the next, after the next. And then usually people are listening in their car, listening to the lyrics. So it's almost 2 things happening at once. So to answer your question without going crazy, I think it's a rotation sometimes of styles. Sampling gets hot, then it's musicality, and then now we're back to raw drums doing a bunch of different things, which is what trap is. And if you go back to 80s hip hop, that's what it sounds like to me now. So I just think things just rotate and change.
Well, it was chaotic for me, come from the Public Enemy camp, because we sampled everything. $2 million worth, we were sued. But when you have a drum track like James Brown, a scream from Sly and the Family Stone, a bass line from Slave, and you're mixing all of this like a gumbo, you don't know what's gonna come out. But Chuck's dynamic voice, Terminator X doing his thing. You understand what I'm saying? And but by the time we hit the stage and Flavor's flying through the air and all this other kind of stuff, you understand what I'm saying? It just worked, it just kind of worked. It worked for us, because I'll be honest with you, when I first came to the South, yeah, I needed an interpreter.
I remember those conversations. Trying to explain.
Exactly. I mean, just basic conversation without even dealing with the music. Like, asked all what you got up there. I was like, clueless, man. But after a while, I said, okay, I got you. But I was put in some situations like I had to act like I understood. If you get the SWATs and you just try.
I got a reverse story real quick. You know, my first year in college, you know, I had this girlfriend and she was from New York. And so I'm singing the bridge, the bridge. And I said something else, the bridge. I was singing and I said, something bridge. I didn't know what I was saying. She said, it's Queens. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what Queens was. But that was my joint. I played it every day. I was rapping it. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, but why do the big wigs, powers that be, only consider someone like Master P, whom I never understood, but I felt, oh, come on, stop that. Master P made them songs in the damn living room, you know, and all Europe was, and I'm like, but even when Nelly came out, I didn't understand country rap.
But
from New
you
York.
felt it. It was a feeling.
It's a vibe. It's a vibratory frequency, right? I understand.
And I think when you bring up Public Enemy and all the elements that y'all put together, you guys put together every piece, every element, from the DJ and the music and the drum and bass to the dance. I mean, it wasn't dance, but it was routine, it was performance. The S1Ws.
And the bass and the treble.
And the bass and the treble. And then you have Flavor Flav, who is like the Namusair to Chuck. I mean, you guys had every piece in there. How did that come about? Like, was there like a room where you guys kind of was like, we're gonna do this, that? Like, how did you guys put all of those elements together to represent Public Enemy as a group that really talked about the issues that were not only affecting America, but also affecting Africa?
I think in a nutshell, and if Chuck was here, he would tell you, it started out with conversations just like this. That's how a lot of our titles and our songs came about. We had discussion. We had deep discussions. Chuck said he wanted to make music that black women can't dance to. You don't find black women dancing to Public Enemy songs, because you gotta listen. You understand what I'm saying? We wanted to use raw, gutsy music that we've been listening to all our lives. So we asked our mom and dad, granddad, uncles and aunties for their records. And those are the records that we sampled. We wanted to speak truth to power. And we did, uncompromising. We said after 2 years we either gonna be dead or in jail, and we went for it. You understand? We didn't care what people thought. The industry was moving this way, we wanted to go this way. By the time the second album hit, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, God forbid the third one filled with Black Planet. As I said earlier today in another discussion, we purchased 5,000 copies of the ISIS papers, the keys to the colors, because we wanted to raise the vibratory frequency of the thinking of the masses of people. And contrary to popular belief, being pro-black is not anti-white. There was a conflict because Flavor Flav. Me and Flavor Flav were two opposite ends of the spectrum.
It was a balance, though, like we were talking about earlier in terms of balance. He balanced out all that consciousness.
But you ain't have to live with him. Y'all have no idea. Yo, seriously, if you were a board meeting talking to these people about your next album, and this dude come and eat a bucket of chicken, this
On that note, we're going to go. Do we have questions from people? I'm sure we do. How are you?
Well, let me just say one thing about Flavor. Probably out of everyone in Public Enemy, he's the most talented. The man plays 13 instruments. And when you get him in the studio, you can't deny it. The man's bad. You understand what I'm saying? And I think a lot of people that were not drawn to me and Chuck were drawn to Flavor. Because everybody in this audience got a Flavor in their family. Including you, man. Yes, including you.
Okay. So we're going to have some rules for the questions. So that in the interest of time, and we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to ask the question, can you ask the question and just, kind of eliminate the preface to the question? Just kind of ask the question.
Why are you saying that black people giving speeches?
I understand that we like to introduce our questions, but just kind of keep the preface short and get to your question as quickly as possible because we have a lot of people.
So my question is, I grew up in an era where there was a little Tim and a Warren Hill public enemy, coffee shop, so we had everything. And now all I hear is mumble rap and like dumbed down rap. What do you guys think?
Thank you.
I definitely know for a fact that you just have to search for it in other places than just the local radio station because there's still great music being made everywhere, of all types. And I mean that because you're a Ball MJG fan, they have a new record. If you Tribe Called Quest, their new project. Even the 69 Boys got a new record. I mean, that I love it. So, I think it all still exists.
I agree. Don't look at main media streams for all of your sources for good hip hop, rap music. Go look on your social media, YouTube. There are so many up and coming groups out here who are doing great work. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to look for it.
Yeah, I'm a granddad, so I got a 19-year-old right now in Chicago shooting her video, and she mumbling. No, she's actually kind of good, but in most cases, being a father, I use it as a teachable moment. Let me know what you're talking about. What do they talk about in the song, and then I kind of use it as a teachable moment.
I would throw this out there for just people to think about. It's just a thought. There was something called scatting.
Yeah. Algebra is one thing.
And I wonder, just a thought, just a hypothesis. I wonder what place mumble rap, as it's called, is coming from in the same way we think about scatting. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Next question. Just a thought.
All right. Thank you. So I was born and raised in Africa, and here recently, so hip hop is kind of something I've discovered in the past few years. And the way I see it, it seems like its biggest effect was bringing Black culture to the mainstream, like kind of like letting other people see it and like understand it better. You mentioned how a lot of it, the roots of it come from Africa and come from all of those African cultures. Do you think that hip hop artists have a duty to kind of more actively share that part of it? The same way they brought Black African American culture to the mainstream, should they try and more actively bring that African root to other people?
You want to say that?
Yeah, I think it's for those of us who know what the Africanisms are in hip hop culture, I think it's up to us to educate those, to identify it because it's there. It's there in the rhythm, it's there in the lyrics, and I'm glad you talked about scatting because scatting, if you look at some of the languages, for instance, in Zambia, some of the indigenous languages, even the language itself is rhythmic. And so you have these scatting and the mumbles, all of it is really using your voice as instrumentation. And I think it's up to us to educate each other as well as our children, the importance of this is what the Africanism is in this music, so they can be able to identify it and know it and own it.
And there's a movement around that education. You know, there are, and it's still a very early movement. You know, there's a movement in higher ed for more courses that are centered around hip hop, where these conversations can take place. There's a movement around in K through 12 education where hip hop is being integrated in science and mathematics, and so these conversations can take place in a more real way, because a lot of times, you know, Dr. Asa Hilliard calls it your cultural DNA. A lot of times it's just kind of in you, and I think a lot of artists kind of don't even know that it's in them. They're just doing it. It's just part of the performance. And so that movement around education, because I don't want to get lost in that, it's happening. It's still just very early, you know, but those types of spaces and learning environments are being created every day in our educational institutions.
But Dr. Joyce, what part of it, according to, I mean, based on his question, what part of it are we are in conflict with? I don't think we are. Once we understand hip hop, it's based on 4 fundamental elements. Based on the 4 fundamental elements of the universe. We're divinely connected. We're divinely connected to the self. So, of course, I owe Africa. You understand what I'm saying? I owe Africa a lot more than I can say in the English language that I'm speaking, because it's hard for me to articulate it using this tongue. I don't speak an African language, but I can demonstrate it.
Right.
And the only thing I can do, if I can't DJ, I can't breakdance, if I'm not an MC and I'm not a graphic writer, what else is left? Because the four fundamental elements are synthesized by the 5th element, which is knowledge of self. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I've been in a circle with brothers and sisters from the continent. And I said, who want to get down? I said, we ain't got no music. I said, we are the music, right? So I just said, it is on. That's all we need. That's all we need.
Going back to that first question, if you had to explain to an 8th grader what hip hop was, and you just started beatboxing, I bet you they get it a lot quicker
Yes.
than any type of way, because you just connected through that sound.
Right.
Next question.
So we talked a lot tonight about the classic hip hop songs and artists that we love and the connection to Africa, but what are some recent either projects or recent artists within like the last 5 years that you guys feel like really highlight either our cultural connection to Africa or just the impact of Africa and how we came to the U.S. and how it's impacted our society today?
That's a very, very deep question. Because as of late, I've just kind of turned the music down. Not turned it off. I just turned it down a little. Maybe because I'm getting old, man, but I turned it down. But I don't know. I'm still connected to wise, intelligent, and pro-righteous teachers. You understand? I'm still connected to Sarah. I'm still connected to David Banner, the God Box. I'm still, you understand what I'm saying? That's just where I am. Now I make room for other stuff, but at the end of the night, yeah, that's where I'm at. I gotta leave the dome.
I mean, Drake comes to mind as someone, and I know he gets some flack for what he does, but I think he, as an artist, he touches a lot of different styles and musical themes that we can trace back to Africa. But I was going to say the main thing that I see, as soon as you said that question, was dance. I mean, in all of these videos and everything I see viral, and I watch these kids get down like in a way that's just incredible, like they defy gravity. And so that's really my answer to that.
I think we also got to add Kendrick Lamar in there.
He's a great artist. I'm missing the African piece. I mean, as far as when I think rhythmically, that's all. I mean, we talk about great artists, there's tons of them.
Right.
So it's not really.
And I think before him, Blue Big Fiasco and a few other people. Yeah, because I mean, my antenna is up for that kind of music because I need to feed this. Yeah. So, but as far as the women are concerned, they did damage to the collective group of women in hip hop. There's no more women groups. You understand what I'm saying? And everyone became a solo artist And then they download the Diva program, which was Little Kim. And it failed horribly. I love Little Kim. I love Little Kim's Asian self. But Little Kim, alright, we can go, but not love Little Kim. The Diva program was in motion, but notice at the same time when that failed, they downloaded Diva program 2.0 and we got Nicki Minaj. At the same time, they put Lauryn Hill in jail. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. What's your question, sir?
And she's out now doing really great things. Yes.
If I look at the African continent, I see masculinity at the highest level. And if I look at some mumble rap artists today, and you see the demasculation of black men, do you think these artists should just maybe be reclassified? Because I see them more as rock stars more than rappers. I mean, if you look at early rock stars, they were very feminine, but they had tons of women.
I want to attack that. I love that. Okay, I want to address, that's so funny. You know, we talked earlier about, things just revolving and rotating and whatever, right? I never even thought about that rock star analogy as far as their look and image. But I do want to address about the elements of hip hop and reclassifying, right? Even the music, right? Because I talk about this every day, what I'm about to tell you now. The elements of hip hop, we talk about breaking. I know we don't talk about beatboxing as much, graffiti, turntablism, the art of DJing and MCing. Me and a good friend of mine, Kay, we saying, the lyrics is dangling right now. Turntablism, you don't even see it. It's not a part of hip hop. Hip hop right now is love hip hop, reality TV, and whatever's on the radio, and so we know what's on the radio. The turntablism is not celebrated. Breakdancing is not celebrated. Graffiti is not celebrated. Again, beatboxing, come on, right? So now, if you follow, I follow Red Bull. If I want to hear, if I want to see some incredible breakdancing, I go to Red Bull. All of the turntable, all the DJ battles, all the technique and skills that's been developed through DJing through the years, they're at Red Bull and all of the companies that make the DJ equipment. It's not in the culture of hip hop as we know it today. So when I look at hip hop now, I'm saying, what is it? It's not even using the elements of hip hop. I be feeling like it need to be reclassified. I say this almost every day. So the look of it, I can't even. I just.
But oftentimes we got to talk about like the great thing about those different platforms that you're talking about is they give us the opportunity to really experience hip hop in its most indigenous form. I think a lot of times we can no longer depend on these popular media platforms to give us that hip hop.
I carry turntables to DJ with now, not because I can't use a controller for anything.
Sure.
It's because I want to give you an experience of what you've never seen. Yeah, I did a party for Pastor Troy last night for his birthday. He had the young boys DJing after me. I said, let me do the early set because I'm going to go home. Let me do the early set, right? I don't need to be that late. I'm there at 8 o'clock. The young DJ came and he sat down. Now, where I come from, you need to sit down and DJ. There's no disrespect to him because he just didn't know no better. He watched me stand there and DJ and mix and scratch and we can have a conversation because I've been doing this since I was 11, so I've been talking and dropping. Right? I mean, it's like it becomes a part of you. And he just kept asking, how do you do that? How do you do that? And I said, well, you can't use that. The toys that he's using to do what I'm doing. And I just think, so I'm saying that to say that for me in my everyday life is just something I want to continue to at least show person to person, room to room, what hip hop really is.
But again, we do have to understand the appropriation of hip hop. When you say what it looks like, it may not look like we want it to look like for us. But for some other people, how many people own Calvin Harris's? $43 million is to me over the last few years. DJ. I got the wrong job, man. I should have been a DJ. Right. But hold on. How many people heard of the Jabberwocky? got a residency in Las Vegas. So when you talk about breaking and DJing, there it is. The appropriation of hip hop. You can't make that. I'm not saying you can't.
But no, is that what you're saying, Griff?
Huh? Okay. We're on the same page.
I'll let you go. Take it there.
Next question.
Okay, since we were talking about spirit and truth and how we as a people have to try to get back to that, and it comes through in our music. And musical frequency 528 is the frequency of love. And that's what we have to try to get back to. I'm curious if you see that in what y'all do being more incorporated today. Because that's what we need to get back to so brothers and sisters can stop killing each other, downgrading each other, and all of that. So that's my question.
I think we'll forever have battling in hip hop. That's just not going to go anywhere. We didn't do that to kill one another. We just kind of, you understand what I'm saying? The vibratory frequency that he talked about, this frequency of love. I don't think Luther Vandross, Freddie Jackson, or none of these people that made love songs, Babyface, I don't think they know that. I don't know how intelligent they are. They're quite intelligent, good singer-songwriters, but they weren't measuring the frequency. We just do what we do. You understand what I'm saying? I have 5 children. If I told y'all some of the songs I played while I was making love, you'll be like, damn. So that frequency of love, I just think something that resonates from who and what we are, and it's different from person to person. You understand what I'm saying? I think this is love. You understand what I'm saying? We share it, we actually having, we brave and bold enough to have this conversation today. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't only have to be in the music, like the gentleman said in his question. So we can use that frequency to kind of set a methodology in place for young people. Young people are going to do what they're going to do in the club. I stopped by 559. I didn't dare go in. You understand what I'm saying? It just wasn't my kind of spot. You understand what I'm saying? But there was a degree of love there. There was a tribal thing happening.
Very tribal.
You understand what I'm saying? If you take an African drum, superimpose it with the European bird, it's almost like cognitive dissonance, man. We got tribal beats happening, and then you on it talking about somebody's mama. You understand what I'm saying? Or degrading somebody. It's just what it is, bro. You understand what I'm saying? Each individual in this room got to have their own filter. And I just think that's real. That's just Professor Griff.
I think also we have to, and I'm sorry, I have my eye wired, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge where the spirit and where the truth and where the love is. You know, particularly sometimes I think we are so hard on ourselves. I know that we have our community issues, we have problems that we've experienced for time and time again, but I think it's also important that part of reestablishing the love, the truth, and the spirit is acknowledging the love, the truth, and the spirit that's there. That's really important.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do that, then we can't depend on anybody else to do that. So I am really, and I'm not trying to be an idealist or an optimist about it. I know that we have our challenges. And a lot of times those challenges, I think, are unduly placed on our cultural art form.
Right.
And so it's important that when we talk about the love that we are teaching and the spirit that is there and the truth that is there, that we acknowledge that even when we are trying to do better as a community. That's really important to
But we as older people cannot keep laying violence and murder squarely on the shoulders of young cats that listen to trap music. We can't do that. You understand? Because if they look up and what the music we were listening to, they say, man, y'all crazy. But people have been killing people for a long time. Trap music just got on the scene. We can't lay that on the shoulders of young people. Because we're asking them to solve something and stop something they didn't start. Plain and simple.
So I'm really glad you brought up the Jabberwockies and Calvin Harris, because for me, seeing those people and seeing their journey, because I was watching them from jump when they started and watching that journey grow and hearing how they were inspired by the music,
by hip hop, and that, I mean, hip hop is a story. It's a passion. It's a beat. It's a fire that drives, that pushes. So that pushed them to do something different, and I think that's really important. So what inspires you? What is the most sort of unusual or unexpected place where you found your fire?
You found your fire. One of the most unusual places where you found your fire, in the sense that the Jabberwockies did?
Or yeah, in the sense of just that it was something that caught you, off guard. And you were like, that's the thing
That's
that
what I
I
wanna
need to,
do.
I need to do that, or I need to write about that, or I need to talk about that, or.
Yeah, I think mine is very easy. That moment in those discussions I was having with the brothers in Public Enemy, the moment that we said, our music, we want to be able to speak truth to power and raise the vibratory pitch of our thinking into the thinking of God. You understand what I'm saying? And the only way we're going to know that from being on stage and looking out in the audience. And we saw it, and it happened right before our eyes. They took off those nasty, cheap gold chains that made your neck turn green. I'm not sure if y'all experienced that. And then they put on African medallions. People became more cultural. People joined organizations. People became more conscious. And if the music did that, we said, good, our job is done. Yeah.
For me, I'm not a hip hop artist, but I'm a hip hop consumer and a hip hop educator. For me, that unusual moment was the first time that I listened to Queen Latifah's entire All Hail the Queen album. And that's when I realized that, women have a powerful voice in our community. We associate a lot of hip hop MCs and DJs with the West African griot, right? But we don't talk about the women griots that were so powerful that, people, they made a living keeping the history, telling. They were the newscasters of their day, and they told the history accurate, and they did it in a way that, like you said earlier, it celebrated what was going on. Yes, there were challenges, there were killings, but these women, they celebrated themselves, and they celebrated even their men. And so there was no breaking down. And so when Queen Latifah talks about ladies first, and when you watch that video, I listened to Rappers Delight and the message and all of that, but when I saw Queen Latifah talk about ladies, that, to me, that was the move that said, you know what, women have a place.
Nabs?
Yes. Hip hop hit me like a brick, and I tried to rap and it didn't work, and I tried to break dance and I almost broke my neck. And
doing hip hop therapy.
yeah, man. And I put my hands on those turntables. A turntable, I had one at first, and I like the idea of the entrepreneurial spirit. Thank you, brother. Spirit of doing my own thing, and it's funny because the fire gets lit over and over again, depending on where I am in life. And I've done radio, I've toured, I've done all the things I've envisioned, and then the Lord gives me something else. And now I realize that, as I spoke earlier, about the preservation of hip hop, not just in physical form of all the records I ever had, and all the digital files now still keep, but teaching, sharing 80s, 70s, 80s hip hop, 90s hip hop, 2000s, understanding what's happening now, because sometimes because we're in it, we gotta see where trap goes and where it goes and how long it lasts and how long is the thing that people are discussing, because at some point maybe hip hop will become that thing, that kind of click thing like jazz. And I don't know if that's the proper description of jazz, but either you love jazz or you don't. You know what I mean? It's not something that's being as exploited as hip hop. You know what I mean? Because there are people, we love hip hop so much, it's like a religion, and when you lived your whole life with it. So that's where my fire is now, just a reigniting of purpose in this culture, in this life that I've led, and the great people that I've been inspired. I mean, Griff, they inspired me so much, man, just being up here with his brother. excites me, and I love it, you know.
Love you too.
It was definitely all hail the queen when I saw that video and I was changed. But I think the spark was in a math classroom. I'm a former math teacher, and I was a closet writer for different hip hop magazines. And so I think for me, it was when I was introduced to Trisha Rose's Black Noise. And I was like, wow, so they're writing about hip hop in the academy? So she published her dissertation on rap music? Like, you can do that? And for me, I was like, that's what I want to do. I was like, I want to do what she's doing. And so that was the fight. And so you get these moments, and it was solidified in many different ways, but I was afraid, I was scared, and I met this guy at Funk Jazz Cafe. His name was Professor Griff, and I told him that I wanted to do that. And he encouraged me. He gave me homework assignments, and the tasks that I was given later became my methodology for doing my research. And so tonight, I thanked him because he's very much a part of that fire. He was part of that spark. And so I wanted to do it publicly because I really appreciate that, and I wanted you to know that you were part of that fire that the young man was asking.
Give thanks.
So through social media, the globalism of social media and how it's basically connected everyone through the world, and collaborations with the Drakes and the Futures with major Afrobeat artists like Wizkid and Davido, and you have major artists in the UK, Stormzy and Skepta, who identify both as African and British males. Do you think that the identity of hip-hop is becoming more fluid? Or what do you think the forecast of hip-hop in terms of Afrobeats or that African identity? Do you think that there's going to be a collaboration? Is it going to become more fluid? Or do you think there's going to be sort of like a pushback with that?
Dr. Paula?
Yeah, I agree with DJ Nabs, what he said earlier. There's this circular evolution that's going on in hip hop globally that I don't foresee, this is me personally, I don't foresee a pushback because it's so strong. And hip hop is really a strong force right now, all over. The media, fashion, art, music, dance, it's really a strong force right now. And I doubt that it can be pushed back at this point.
I think this is more inclusive also. But like Nabs said, it's circular. It's coming right on back around. When hip hop came on the scene, the trials and tribulations that we as black people had to establish it. It's almost like giving birth up in the Bronx, in the dark, in the park, when they turn all the lights off at a certain hour. I mean, we had to take the screwdriver and the pair of pliers and rig it. You understand what I'm saying? And there was no such thing as this whole idea of two turntables and a mixer. We had to create that and make that happen. There was no hip hop records. We stole our parents' records and came out and found the beat. And we went from turntable 1 to turntable 2 and made the beat. In the early days, it was always about the DJ. The MC was only there to big up the DJ. And then if you were there and you knew how to dance, you weren't dancing on the concrete. So we kicked open boxes and taped them down and we did the damn thing. You understand what I'm saying? Plain and simple. Then when you left, you wanted to leave your mark. So you took the spray cans that you stole on the way there and you tagged your name on the train, the wall, the sidewalk, wherever you can tag it. When them trains went out through the 5 boroughs and you read what was on the train, now if you wasn't highly skilled in linguistics, you wouldn't know what the hell was on that train. But you had to know how to read, write, and understand graffiti. We knew something was going on in the Bronx, and we gave birth to this thing called hip-hop. And like the tracks that went out to the 5 boroughs was almost like veins in the human body. we knew something was going on, and all roads led back to the Bronx. So hip hop was born, but each individual borough did it their own way. Long Island, we got it last. But look what we produced. Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy, Ella Ness, Leaders of the New School, Busta Rhymes, De La Soul. I could go on and on and on. EPMD. So each borough had their own greats. We just have a serious energy vortex where we lived on Long Island that produced those particular groups with that particular frequency.
So, just to close out, I want to ask each one of you all in 15, 20 seconds to just give some final words on hip-hop culture. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to it being to Africa or being inspired by Africa, but what are some final words that you would like to impart on the audience around hip-hop culture, the performance of it, the aesthetic of it, the spirit of it, the vision of it, where it's headed? Where would you like to go with that?
I think the spirit of it is alive and well for sure. And you know, when we talk about the millennials, I only have my nephew as a reference, and he's a smart kid, and he loves what he loves, and there's things he does not know, even as much as he thinks he knows. So it's my job to give him the background. And I look at hip hop in that same way. They, you know, for it to move forward, they're going to do what they're going to do with it. But us as OGs, we need to let them know the foundation of it. Otherwise, without a foundation, it goes away. You know what I mean? To embrace the foundation. You know, don't just keep that on. You know, we create a lot of things, and don't let hip hop be taken away from us. We don't know where it came from. You know?
Yeah, I agree with DJ Nabs. I think of the Sankofa bird. You know, you can't go forward without looking behind you. So it's up to us to, you know, keep this almost a 50-year cultural phenomenon, one of the longest in history, in American history. It's not going anywhere. And I think, like you're saying, it's up to us to educate those who are with us, those who are ahead of us, and those who are coming behind us, that this is a rich culture.
Professor Simone said our culture is packaged, and it's supposed to be packaged and sold to us and other people. Why is it that our culture now is packaged and sold back to us as our culture? We have the young people in the audience have to take hip hop where it needs to go. No one can predict that. It's up to y'all to do that. You understand? I'd like to see the next Public Enemy, but our story needs to be told to us by us. You understand what I'm saying? So last but not least, you know, we may not get all that we pay for in life, but we sure pay for every damn thing we get. You understand? Hip hop is high infinite power here in our people. Thank you.